you differentiate the types of certification. Before I do that, I want to really also clarify the difference between what represents an industry versus a professional within an industry. This will be important as we have a dialogue about the different HR certification opportunities that you have in front of you here. An industry professional or an industry certification is often that role that is, you imagine a vertical and very formal, very specific in terms of the core competencies, and typically requires a number of years within a very specific given role. So if you think of in terms of the HR industry, for individuals that have been focused on compensation, benefits, on specific components of workforce development, hiring, workplace investigations, that is real functional, very specific, formal human resources. And so you think of that as a vertical pathway from entry-level positions on up to director level, where you're really focused on the ins and outs of very specific HR functions. The certification that really is probably best aligned to that vertical HR role is going to be your PHR, Professional Human Resources, and your STHR certification. We'll discuss those certifications a little bit later. Now, I want you to think of the profession, though, as something in a component of, as we think of HR, that has really evolved over the years to be more of a global role. And when I say global, I don't mean international, I mean global throughout the organization. In other words, individuals who have come to work very closely with HR in areas of recruiting, training, coaching, workforce development, where again there's a real heavy operations component. You're supervising, managing, moving a lot of the personnel towards strategic objectives. And we really see this sort of differentiation evolve as an effort from the professionals over the last about 15 years that have really sought to bring the recognition of the human resource department to the strategic table. And we really saw a widespread movement throughout most organizations, large and small, inviting HR professionals to that strategy planning and strategic table. And that really occurred by about 2010, 2011. Following that time frame, a lot of the strategic executives in areas of finance and marketing, what they recognize is anything related to human capital really requires HR to be at the forefront in terms of guiding strategy when it goes down into implementation. And so that's why we really see now a sort of a division between that vertical I am HR, and my role is focusing on design, developing, and implementing very specific HR policies and procedures, as opposed to I work within the HR profession in terms of recruiting the right talent to the team, in terms of onboarding and training, coaching, mentoring, and guiding individuals and groups of professionals, more in a horizontal component, again, where you might be working with individuals out of financing, marketing, operations, really other components of the business, not just supporting HR specific. And so that sort of global role is really how we define and differentiate the industry from really somebody within the HR profession as a whole. Now, this is important because in certification, we'll see the same types of differentiation are now available. Certification is essentially an independent measurement of your industry and or applied skill sets. It's often conducted through independent testing and is different than higher education. Higher education is really that effort of going to class and being tested against predefined knowledge measurements. When a certification is provided and conferred, it is really relying on tested or applied methodologies to demonstrate and measure an individual's capability based on having experience within an industry or profession. And so that's why we see these concepts of situational examinations. There's a wide array of how examinations are conducted, but in all cases is that independent measurement where there are no predefined standards that you've been taught to. The associations and professions are federally chartered and mandated to essentially measure your recognition and understanding to warrant conferral of the certification. There are different types of certification out there. I'm going to briefly touch on each of them. Primarily, we have, again, the industry, that very vertical, very specific role-defined certification. We have professional, which is, again, more of that global, sort of holistic, yes, still defined by an industry. And then we have an applied. Applied meaning that it really cuts across the different horizontal components of an organization. In other words, core competencies that are valuable, whether you're in project management, in sales and marketing and HR, those skill sets are necessary regardless of your seat on any organization. So when we talk about the professional, and we'll get into the specifics and types of certification, I want you to think again of that global role as really being best tied to SHRM's new certification, the SHRM-CP or SCP. That stands for SHRM Certified Professional or SHRM Senior Certified Professional. Again, for those of you who are involved in HR, but from a broad basis where you are supporting groups, teams, and employees that really fall into other components of the organization, such as financing and marketing, that SHRM-CP is probably ideal for you. The industry certification, again, is very heavy based, less on the overall applied competencies, more on your functional knowledge of the industry-specific experience. In other words, not only do you know HR, but you know compensation, you can understand the core specific contributing elements of compensation as it relates to achieving a business strategy. So again, think of that professional as interaction with all employees throughout the organization, that global HR business partner, whereas the PHR, SPHR, project management, again, if you were coming from a large organization where you worked in project management, you're engaging with teams, it is about really understanding the very concrete, specific ins and outs of your industry. From the applied basis, we won't talk much about that on today's particular conference call, but there's definitely a rapid movement towards the growth. In fact, project over 400% growth across various applied competencies. You think of World at Work in terms of compensation professionals, IIA in terms of auditing professionals, the CPC, CPN in terms of coaching and negotiations. Again, those certifications are measuring your capabilities regardless of your industry and professional role. In other words, if you're in project management, the ability to negotiate and work to bring teams together to deliver strategic business output, that's a fundamental skill set. Either you have it or you don't, and that's what those applied certifications work towards measuring, again, without specific regard to your formal professional experience. So those are the sort of three key different types of certification, and differentiation is very important because it does create choices for you that you're going to want to identify, really make the most sense for you within your own career development. So I want to speak to you a little bit about why certification is important. Overall, in fact, recently, the New York Times indicate that those of you who might be seeking a job or a promotion, overall you have about 10% opportunity to do so. Now, this really isn't surprising because we've known since about 2010 when SHRM first researched this. I did and conducted a revalidation here in 2012 and 2013 that 92% of individuals who are promoted or hired, in fact, hold certification. Again, it's that independent measurement that you've got the good stuff, that you know your industry or you know how to function within a broad global role to support your profession. And so that is why certifications have become so in demand. In fact, go back to when I first got involved with independent certifications in 2005. The race then was not only to earn a BA, but how quickly could you get an MBA? BAs were being discussed as being, equivalent of high school diplomas. Now, what industry found, though, is that earning a BA and then subsequently a 3 to 4 year MBA, too long, too slow, and too broad. So what happened is we began to see as HR really especially elevated in the strategic business component saying, look, the great organizations focus on who first. We learned that from Collins in his book, Good to Great. What we know, though, is that certifications are a litmus test that individuals can earn in well under a year's time that demonstrate that they, in fact, are who we're looking for to fill a void on our team. And so from 2008 until about 2010, we started to see the first transference and indication that holding a certification was very valuable professionally. Since 2010, definitely by 2012, with the Great Recession going on, it very much came down to we've got to identify who's got the skills, because there's a line of talent out the door wanting to get jobs and get hired with us. And at that moment, we really saw this massive transition where not only are 92% of job openings going to those who hold certification, promotions are being based on that. Pay scale reports that on average a certified professional earns 30% more than individuals in the same job set, same job profession with identical years of experience. So in the end of the day, for really a big shift since 2005 in that holding a BA is less important now than holding a certification. But it's not, again, just about getting hired into the team or promoted. There's some big reasons about why certifications are important. As again we discussed, there's a differentiation between very specific vertical formal knowledge of your industry, the applied basis of how you conduct yourself within the industry in support of other departments, or those applied skill sets, which is how you really engage with other individuals. And what we know is that overall, 40% of employees in the last several years have started to feel disengaged. Now, what's frightening is that as that level of disengagement has begun to reduce, the willingness to leave the organization has dramatically increased. So that really puts a strong demand on how employees effectively supervise, manage, and engage their talent to keep them on the team so that a company does not fall victim to the brain and skill drain as employees look to consider other opportunities outside of their organization. What we do know is the majority of individuals who feel relatively disengaged or dissatisfied in the workplace directly blame their managers, because they perceive their managers as having an inability and a lack of confidence to understand and know how best to engage that employee. Now, what we know is that individuals who go through certification, and the histogram on the screen really shows some of these levels of capabilities and confidence, what you see is in all cases, employees report the majority of HR professionals falling well below what we call the 80-20% or the Pareto effect. In other words, 20% of your team produces 80% of the measured profitable output. We see this occurrence in non-certified professionals. Now, what we know is when professionals make the time to learn, invest in their education, and obtain independent certification, the applied results simultaneously increase with them. And we've tested this and retested this with several hundred certified professionals each year, year in, year out, measuring not only their own self-confidence, but also their peers' confidence and recognition of that individual as a professional capable at effectively engaging them either one-on-one as an employee or within a team environment. And so these numbers and data coming out of the last 5 years, over 1,700 HR professionals that we've worked with, in the end, we know that holding certification, by and large, ensures that your HR department really is operating above that 80% benchmark. So think of professional development really as an applied and a learned process, and that is why we see on independent certifications a large variance between individuals who simply sit for the exam. Take the PHR and SPHR exams. For an individual who meets the eligibility, meaning they have at least 2 years of management experience for the PHR or at least 8 years of senior management experience for that SPHR, these individuals have been within the role. When they simply sit down and take the test, a pass rate is less than 25%. Yet when they go through a program, through a college partner, we see that national pass rate increase to about 60%. So the overall cumulative pass rate for these independent certifications is roughly 55%. Through our programs, again, what we conduct is independent measurement, design, and development of opportunities to enhance through professionalism, through effectively applied knowledge. We call that peak outcomes and peak learning, peak experiences. So again, professionalism is defined as effectively applied knowledge. And when individuals come through our learning program, when they sit for these certifications, we've been awarded year in, year out for 10 years for having the highest pass rates in the nation, over 92% over the 10-year period. This last year and a half, we've been at a 98.5% pass rate, regardless of the type of learning program or certification, HR certification you're sitting for. Our certification programs, we really put you through essentially a three-part experience in order to help you achieve this peak output. In the first phase of your certification experience, you're going to take the time to explore understanding how to learn, more importantly, how to gain your confidence, because at the end of the day, you do work in HR. It's a matter of unlocking your own potential and having the confidence and the recognition that just because you may not have worked in compensation and benefits does not mean that you don't understand compensation and benefits, because it directly impacts your industry or professional role as within HR. During the second phase of our learning, we help you start to leverage that confidence and begin to think strategically about how to apply the right tools to enhance your learning to maximize your performance on your independent HR certification exam experience. And the final phase of your learning, really as the program we offer begins to come to an end, you will really go out and design a map of mastery, autonomy, and purpose, and begin implementing a process of continuous learning to ensure that you achieve those peak outputs and go into the exam and are successful. And what we know is that under using this three-step methodology, our program, our participants who take our program and test within 2 weeks of ending are just as successful as the participants who keep using our system of learning, and they wait up to 2 months to take that exam. So in other words, we're teaching you a process, really a profound thinking, acting, and learning that will help you naturally unlock your capabilities, so that way you go into the exam with the confidence that you go into the exam having applied the learning and the investment you've made in your education, and that is when we see that substantial increase in applied performance from that histogram I presented earlier.